Go Insung asked with a puzzled expression whether the man in front of him was indeed a philosophical figure as well as a legend in history. Annoyed, Socrates confirmed it. Go Insung then asked how the stranger could speak Korean so fluently. Socrates replied, because he has been in this place for 2,000 years. The audience laughed, considering Socrates to have rotted in that place. Go Insung, surprised by Socrates' answer, asked how he could survive in that place for 2,000 years. Was it true that he didn't reincarnate or something? Socrates laughed heartily at Go Insung's question. Who might have thought that place was hell or something similar? According to him, hell was where Go Insung lived before. Socrates stated that in the human world, everyone initially had to pay for postnatal care and then spend more money on food and baby items. Additionally, everyone had to spend money and more money on their children until college. Even if someone graduated from college, they had to write many resumes to try to apply for a job. If successful, they could go to a good company, but even then, they wouldn't be able to buy a house even though they had worked all their lives. And when someone eventually died, their family had to pay a fairly expensive funeral cost, but still, others would judge their way of life. So Socrates asked, isn't that a sad way of living? Go Insung fell silent, unable to deny the truth spoken by Socrates. To divert the awkwardness, Go Insung asked if Socrates couldn't change his body. With a broad smile, Socrates asked if Go Insung was worried because he was an old man. Go Insung replied that he just thought Socrates was the same age as himself. So Socrates asked if Go Insung was disappointed because he was older. Annoyed at running out of words while speaking with Socrates, Go Insung asked why the old man always managed to silence him. Socrates replied that his new hobby now was making Go Insung jokes. Simply put, because it amused him. The audience began to laugh at their interaction. Moreover, every word spoken by Socrates was true. As they continued chatting, suddenly a roar was heard from behind Go Insung. When the young man looked back, he was shocked to see the appearance of a humanoid creature that was already dried up. Go Insung looked worried as the creature continued to drool when looking at him. Suddenly, the creature quickly ran towards Go Insung's arm and grabbed his hand. Socrates told Go Insung to quickly get rid of the creature before it saw blood. Go Insung immediately grabbed the creature's head and threw it to the ground while shouting for the creature to stay away from him. With a worried expression, this young man touched his bleeding hand and asked what the creature was. Socrates asked if Go Insung had never seen an undead before. Socrates explained that the creature would not die unless someone severed its head. And according to him, the way Go Insung beat it up was not enough to kill it. He informed me that the creature would still writhe and walk again in about half an hour. Go Insung was shocked to hear this information. Socrates explained further that Go Insung had to pass through the labyrinth on their side to avoid the undead. But before that, Socrates reminded Go Insung that he was bleeding quite a lot, and the audience who saw so much blood thought that Go Insung would soon die from blood loss and join them. But Go Insung did not respond to their comments. The young man reached into the hologram screen to retrieve his pet turtle and, with a friendly smile, welcomed the creature and then told it to pay him because he had fed it. The mystical turtle licked Go Insung's bleeding arm until the wound immediately healed and the scar disappeared. Go Insung then thought he should change his clothes, which looked gruesome. The audience agreed with Go Insung's statement. The young man's appearance was already too gruesome. After putting on a short-sleeved white shirt, Go Insung placed the mystical turtle on his shoulder, saying that the creature would accompany him. But before that, he had to buy a weapon at the store. When faced with the dilemma of choosing a weapon, Socrates asked if Go Insung knew anything about the art of using weapons. The young man honestly replied that he did not know. Socrates suggested Go Insung choose a spear because it is the oldest weapon in history. The spear is very economical and anyone can learn to use it. Socrates also explained that swords are more suitable for soldiers, while arrows are not good for close range. Go Insung carefully considered Socrates' advice. He examined all the weapon lists on the hologram screen carefully. The young man thought that the most expensive weapon he could buy was a diamond-tipped spear priced at 800 balloons. But because he didn't know how difficult the dungeon was, he decided to start with a bamboo spear first. The audience immediately protested against Go Insung because bamboo spears were too weak. They believed that a bamboo spear would break within 1 second, whereas Go Insung's life depended on that weapon. Go Insung reconsidered and asked about a rusty spear. The audience was surprised that he would buy a rusty spear when he could buy a steel one with just an additional 50 balloons. Go Insung decided that he would buy a steel spear, but then his audience was puzzled as to why he would buy it when there was a spear with a central point with just an additional 1 or 2 points. They believed that an ordinary elephant would not be comparable to hard steel. Go Insung was annoyed. His audience kept wavering over him. They kept suggesting that Go Insung buy a thick steel weapon or a diamond-tipped spear. But before that, the audience asked him to beg for 469 points to buy the diamond-tipped spear. According to Go Insung, it was a genius idea. He immediately put on a cute, adorable face to win Socrates' heart. Annoyed by Go Insung's behavior, Socrates immediately gave him more balloons. Finally, Go Insung bought a diamond-tipped spear. The spear was made of crystal and had the power to kill up to 10%. Go Insung immediately tried the spear and thought that it was great compared to the weapons he saw in the treasure dungeon. The audience thought that the weapon looked very suitable and powerful when used by Go Insung, who was a gym bro. At that moment, Socrates reminded Go Insung that the sun was about to set, so they had to get to work. Before entering the labyrinth, the system appeared and announced that they could enter directly but first had to step on hexagonal stones. Before entering the labyrinth, they were asked to choose the level of difficulty. There were expert, intermediate, and beginner levels. The higher the difficulty level, the better the rewards. Go Insung thought that he would choose the difficulty level, but suddenly Socrates chose the expert level, which was the highest difficulty level. This surprised Go Insung. Go Insung wanted to explain that he wanted to choose the beginner level first, but Socrates insisted that he must choose the expert level. Finally, the system confirmed that the difficulty level was expert. Go Insung panicked hearing that, but Socrates thought that the young man was foolish because how could he think of taking the easy way out when the rewards would surely be better if the difficulty level was higher. Finally, they were both transferred to the starting point of Dungeons 1-5. The atmosphere here was very tense. The reddish moon shone over the barren battlefield. The system explained that this place was a labyrinth where many prisoners tried to escape and lost their lives. Above the sky, the moon observed the prisoners at all times. If a player had strong determination and wisdom, then he could surely escape from that place. In this session, only 2 people entered. Go Insung, who was not very understanding, asked Socrates what it meant by a total of 4 people being able to enter. Socrates explained that it meant he could bring in several more people. Suddenly, Socrates shouted for Go Insung to focus. Suddenly, several undead monsters appeared attacking them. Go Insung tried to dodge and fight them with the spear he had just obtained. Unexpectedly, this young man managed to chop off the heads of several undead at once. However, Go Insung's journey was still long, especially now that undead monsters with wings appeared. The monster managed to knock down Go Insung and press him to the ground. The young man's body trembled because he was worried he would die right then and there. Seeing this, Socrates only sighed and shook his head briefly. He seemed not to worry at all about Go Insung. But suddenly, Socrates entered Go Insung's body and defeated the pressing undead monsters with a single explosion. Among the blazing fire, burning the undead, Go Insung stood with a different aura. He said he would show the abilities of a 2,000-year-old man to go insane. It was Socrates speaking through Go Insung's body. The undead monsters came again. But this time, with Socrates' help, Go Insung looked more prepared. He aimed his spear to welcome any monster that came. When one monster attacked, Go Insung agilely avoided it. Then he attacked the monster from behind. The audience started to get excited seeing how agile Socrates was behind Go Insung's body. Another monster came to attack. With sharp eyesight and precise movements, Go Insung managed to chop off the monster's head. The audience became more excited, commenting on how cool and amazing Socrates was. Socrates suddenly called Go Insung and said that the young man had dynamic visual acuity and reaction speed, so he had to thank the eggs he ate. They gave him good physical abilities. If they missed even for a moment, they wouldn't be able to get into position for the next move. Socrates reminded Go Insung to dodge and attack at the right time. Go Insung quickly responded that he understood that. At that moment, several other undead monsters appeared. Go Insung, who was still silent, was immediately addressed by Socrates. The manager wanted to Go Insung, who was now taking action according to his instructions so that he would continue to take control. Go Insung readily agreed to that. He tightly gripped his spear to attack the monsters approaching him. This time, Go Insung wasted no movement and stabbed directly, defeating his opponent. The spectators were delighted to see the results of Socrates' teachings immediately benefiting Go Insung. Go Insung continued to fight, facing every monster after successfully dodging their attacks. Go Insung was no longer afraid or scared. In this spirited and fiery battle, Go Insung could feel his strength increasing. The system then appeared and announced that Go Insung's abilities, strength, and focus had successfully reached level 3. Go Insung was happy that he could finally level up. But according to Socrates, it was not yet time to feel happy, because right behind them, several undead monsters had managed to rise again and were about to attack Go Insung once more. Seeing this, Go Insung was shocked. He did not expect the monsters to rise again so quickly. Through a hologram screen, Socrates explained that if Go Insung did not destroy their heads, they would continue to rise. So he had to quickly get holy water instead of just standing there with a panicked face. Go Insung immediately followed Socrates' command. The youth took holy water from his inventory and dripped it onto the monster's head. The youth thought he would only use a little of the water because it was very valuable. But suddenly the monster went berserk after being given a small drop of holy water. Panicked, Go Insung immediately poured holy water into the monster's mouth until only then did the undead monster's body slowly disappear. Go Insung could only breathe a sigh of relief after being so frightened earlier, but the youth realized he had to use the entire bottle to defeat one monster. That meant he used 10 balloons to kill one monster, but now he only had 150 left. The youth looked confused and asked what he should do considering there were still many undead monsters left. The monsters crawled towards Go Insung, who was still standing there in confusion. At that moment, Socrates suddenly said, "There is a saying that knowledge is power." Socrates took out Go Insung's mystical turtle, saying that the turtle was a direct descendant of the black tortoise. Socrates placed the small turtle on the ground, causing the monsters to immediately fall silent in fear. The spectators were shocked to see the monsters' reaction. They were amazed at how the monsters could be scared just by a small turtle. Suddenly, the turtle emitted a holy energy that instantly destroyed all the monsters in front of it. This surprised Go Insung even more. Socrates himself was impressed watching from behind Go Insung's body. He became even more convinced that the turtle was a direct descendant of the black tortoise. Socrates explained that those who come from pure descendants are like a bright red bird symbolizing yang, while the black tortoise symbolizes yin. Thus, like light and darkness controlling death and dark energy. Go Insung just smiled upon hearing the explanation. The spectators who witnessed all of this thought that Socrates not only knew how to communicate but also knew many interesting stories. Socrates emphasized that the way the black mystical turtle grew was by absorbing impure yang energy and sending souls back to hell, like a tree absorbing carbon dioxide and purifying it into oxygen. That's the simple knowledge that Go Insung could understand. After Go Insung's turtle cleared all the undead monsters, the youth immediately approached it, and said that fundamentally, the way the turtle worked must be different from the way a tree worked. So the youth admitted that the previous assumption was wrong. Socrates argued that it was good to recognize one's ignorance as the beginning of gaining wisdom. The spectators laughed at the conversation between the two of them. Then they asked what else Go Insung and Socrates would do next. Go Insung smiled, realizing that he was greatly assisted by Socrates' presence, whom he initially thought was just someone with many balloons. Before continuing the journey, Go Insung sincerely thanked Socrates, who was now confused. But Go Insung explained that he was grateful for everything. But Socrates replied that it was nothing. Now, Go Insung stood up and asked how he could get out of that place. Socrates reminded Go Insung of the explanation before entering the labyrinth. He also reminded him of someone who managed to escape the labyrinth with the help of a thread. Go Insung realized something and dropped some breadcrumbs while thinking that the monsters would not likely use those breadcrumbs. The spectators immediately realized that Go Insung's attitude was inspired by the story of Hansel and Gretel. When Go Insung began his journey, Instant Beauty finally managed to enter Dungeon 1-5. The beautiful girl immediately picked up the breadcrumbs dropped by Go Insung with a cold stare. Go Insung continued to drop breadcrumbs. He realized it had been 2 days since Instant Beauty entered the dungeon, but the girl still didn't contact him. Go Insung wondered if she intended to finish the dungeon alone. He concluded that they probably wanted the dungeon to be completed by a team, considering the specified number of participants allowed. Go Insung wanted to contact Instant Beauty to invite her to cooperate but thought she might lose if she dared to try something funny. So Go Insung continued walking with Socrates while dropping breadcrumbs. They realized it was getting dark again. The moonlight seemed to be fading, but the moon didn't move at all. Go Insung realized that the monsters wouldn't attack him if he didn't approach them first. He deduced that the monsters relied solely on their sense of smell. Go Insung discreetly observed the path ahead. Since he saw all the monsters gathering on one path, he decided to go another way. But Socrates urged Go Insung to approach the monsters. Go Insung said they didn't need to waste time and should take another path. But in the end, they only found a dead end. Go Insung was annoyed because it took them an hour to pass through just one path. Socrates remarked that this was the consequence of Go Insung not listening to him. Go Insung replied, saying there were monsters there. But Socrates explained that there must be a reason why the monsters gathered there. Suddenly, Go Insung realized that the scattered breadcrumbs were gone. He searched in all directions but found nothing. Go Insung panicked and wondered if the monsters had eaten the breadcrumbs. Socrates calmly replied that monsters don't eat breadcrumbs. At that moment, Go Insung heard someone saying, "What about this direction?" When he turned to the source of the sound, Go Insung was sure it was Instant Beauty, so he greeted the girl warmly. The audience began to buzz as they watched these two champions finally meet. Go Insung was slightly relieved to see that the woman in front of him wasn't as big as he imagined, considering her specialization and power. He was also momentarily stunned by the sword on Beauty's waist, which cost 16 balloons. The sword was indestructible and very expensive. He suspected Beauty was very wealthy. Socrates whispered to Go Insung, telling him that the girl could be so powerful because she was controlled by her manager. Socrates could guarantee that. Seeing the two men whispering, Beauty asked why they were whispering. Were they the shy type of men? It was evident that Socrates didn't like Beauty at this point. He told Go Insung to ask Beauty about the missing breadcrumbs, but before they could talk, they both unintentionally spoke at the same time. Finally, Beauty asked Go Insung to speak first. Go Insung immediately asked if Beauty had picked up and eaten the fallen breadcrumbs. Beauty massaged her head upon hearing such a question. Then, with fervor, she explained that she couldn't possibly do that because she brought enough bread from Dungeon 1-4. Roughly, she asked if Go Insung thought she looked like a starving pigeon. The audience laughed at Go Insung's behavior. Beauty couldn't have done that because she had enough balloons to buy food. However, Go Insung insisted that everyone makes mistakes, but if they repent and correct their mistakes, they deserve to live. Socrates fully agreed with Go Insung's statement, considering it the most famous quote in human history. Continuously accused, Beauty scolded Socrates and asked him not to interfere in this matter. Socrates was offended at being called old because he was only slightly older than Soul's history. Beauty firmly denied eating the breadcrumbs. Annoyed, Socrates remarked that today's youth were very rude. But Beauty retorted again, saying it was because Socrates was an old man with little insight. Beauty was very annoyed and frustrated with the situation. But then she noticed a small turtle comfortably perched on Go Insung's shoulder, so she asked where Go Insung got the turtle from. Go Insung replied that the creature wasn't just an ordinary turtle, it was a mystical turtle. Angrily, Beauty said she didn't care about mystical animals. She just wanted to know if it wasn't the turtle that ate her breadcrumbs. Go Insung defended the turtle by saying it was a mystical creature with secrets, and it didn't eat breadcrumbs, especially not the ones already dropped. And even if the little turtle tried to do so, Go Insung would stop it immediately. Angry and frustrated, Beauty asked if Go Insung meant to say that she was worse than the little turtle. The mystical turtle, not accepting it, immediately scolded Beauty. It shocked her that a turtle could raise its voice at her. Not only that, but the turtle could also become angrier and more fiery as if trying to hurl harsh words at her. The audience laughed at the argument between the beautiful girl and the mystical turtle. Feeling defeated, Beauty asked her manager, Queen Bee, to come out and help her. Hearing this nickname, Socrates was surprised and asked if the Queen Bee Beauty referred to as Queen Bee the Ethics. Beauty was surprised at Socrates' response and asked if he knew her manager. Socrates wasn't too concerned about who Queen Bee was, but he was upset because that person had caused a lot of trouble lately, so he wanted to meet the person with the nickname Queen Bee. Go Insung provoked Beauty's anger again by assuming that she didn't eat her breadcrumbs. Beauty was still angry and stated that was indeed the fact. Finally, she apologized and retracted all her previous statements. Though her face still looked very angry, Go Insung apologized for seeming rough even though this was the first time. The Beauty replied that it didn't matter as long as he knew, everything was fine. Go Insung then suggested that since it required 4 people for this level, they might want to work together to complete it. Beauty hesitated for a moment before finally agreeing that she thought so too. Go Insung then asked if they should go somewhere else other than where the undead monsters gathered. Beauty quickly replied no. She invited Go Insung to go there because it seemed like something important was there. Socrates observed that Beauty knew what was needed to choose the right path. Finally, Go Insung allowed Beauty to go ahead. Upon arriving on the road filled with monsters, the 3 of them realized that the monsters seemed not to see or hear them. Go Insung glanced at Beauty and realized that she must not be an ordinary person. So when he tried to divide the opponents among them, with 4 monsters for each, suddenly Beauty leaped with her sword, striking the first monster she encountered. Go Insung was surprised to see someone attacking monsters so quickly. To him, Beauty's movements were so fast it was as if she had just teleported. Despite her beautiful appearance, Beauty looked very agile in attacking the monsters in front of her. The girl didn't seem bothered at all, even though the monster's blood splattered on her face. Not wanting to be outdone by Beauty, Go Insung immediately advanced to attack the monsters after increasing his focus to level 3. Go Insung moved forward and quickly disposed of the monsters coming from behind Beauty. He said that he would hear a thank you from Beauty later, but with a stern face, Beauty replied that it was just Go Insung's dream. Go Insung attacked the monsters coming towards him again. Quickly, he managed to cut off several monster heads rushing towards him. The audience increasingly admired Go Insung's agility and prowess in combat. After they fought, they both thanked the audience, especially for the audience who kept giving them rewards. Go Insung was surprised to find a wooden box with a bull's head symbol on it. He suspected that the object had been protected by the undead monsters. Beauty asked Go Insung to open the box immediately. When the wooden box was opened, it contained an ancient scroll which turned out to be a map of the labyrinth. But the system warned that if the map was opened, it would attract energy that would make the monsters attack them immediately. Go Insung wanted to open the map, but Beauty prevented him, reminding him that if the map was opened, the monsters would immediately come. Finally, Go Insung decided to keep the map and think about how to avoid the monsters first. Beauty said they needed to buy holy water first to destroy the monsters, so Go Insung should do that immediately. Go Insung smiled and asked how many bottles of holy water Beauty had. She replied that she still had 5 bottles. Go Insung then said he would eliminate all the monsters, but in return, they had to share the holy water. Go Insung explained that he didn't have enough water. Beauty wondered in amazement if the young man in front of her would drink holy water like ordinary water. Go Insung ignored Beauty's question and asked if they agreed. Beauty suspected that the young man in front of her didn't have enough money to buy drinking water. Finally, Beauty agreed to the exchange between them. After that, Go Insung immediately placed the mystical tortoise on the ground so that it quickly emitted light from its mouth and removed the undead monsters. Now Beauty realized that the tortoise was not ordinary. Go Insung explained that the tortoise was a mystical creature, a direct descendant of the famous black tortoise. This time, the tortoise could even remove them faster than before. The audience was even amazed to see such a small tortoise could eliminate many undead monsters in a short time. Until finally, only one monster remained. Go Insung thought that the monster had a very good sense of smell, but he was still confused about how the monster could attack so accurately in the right direction. To conduct a test, Go Insung prevented his tortoise from removing the last monster. Beauty, seeing this, was surprised because the monster could quickly rise again. Go Insung took out the fruit of the heavenly bamboo from his inventory. He knew that the fruit had a very strong life force. Then he asked Mr. Socrates to hold the heavenly bamboo fruit. Then he asked Mr. Socrates to stand between him and Beauty. Right after the undead monster regained its strength, it immediately attacked Mr. Socrates. Angry, Mr. Socrates struck back at the monster while yelling, questioning whether the monster lost its mind since it was also an undead itself. Nevertheless, the monster kept trying to attack Mr. Socrates until Beauty finally chopped off its head, causing it to fall. Still shocked, Mr. Socrates asked why the monster had attacked him. Go Insung explained that it might have been because of the fruit held by Mr. Socrates. So, Go Insung concluded that the monster necklaces didn't react to the scent but rather to life energy. According to Go Insung, that was the solution to this problem, a way to distract the monsters while he read the map. Mr. Socrates asked if Go Insung meant for him to hold the object to lure the monsters. He couldn't understand why Go Insung would want to discard something as valuable as the fruit. Go Insung explained that Mr. Socrates only needed to consume a little of the fruit and then run until his life force depleted. He believed this was a perfect plan. So, Go Insung would open the map and read it. When the monsters appeared, Mr. Socrates would lure them away while he and Beauty fled. Then, when everything was safe and Mr. Socrates' life force was depleted, he could return with them. However, suddenly Mr. Socrates said he didn't want to do it. This surprised Beauty and Go Insung. They both asked why Mr. Socrates refused. Mr. Socrates turned the question back to Beauty, asking why her manager couldn't do it instead. Why did he have to run? Mr. Socrates urged Beauty to quickly bring her manager out to join them. Go Insung agreed to this. Finally, Beauty asked her manager to come out immediately, or else she would feel very bad. Suddenly, a flash of blue light appeared before them all. Mr. Socrates was the first to react, looking very surprised to see Beauty's manager. The figure in ancient attire walked, saying it had been a long time for him and his teacher, Mr. Socrates, to meet. Beauty's manager was Mr. Socrates' student Plato. Mr. Socrates and Plato greeted each other after a long time. But the audience was annoyed with their acting, saying it wasn't important now. Beauty herself was shocked to learn that her strong supporter all this time was Plato. Socrates said he hadn't seen his student recently, so he asked if Plato was talking nonsense or what problem his student had caused. Or was his student hiding because he was too ashamed to meet him? Annoyed by such criticism, Plato said that's what he should ask. What was his teacher doing here? Mr. Socrates replied that this was his little hobby. So Plato said this was also his little hobby. Hearing Plato's answer, Mr. Socrates immediately asked if he could ask a female streamer to work as a hobby. Plato panicked and asked nervously how his teacher knew about that. The audience laughed happily at the interaction between the student and the teacher. They found it very funny to see a Westerner arguing in Korean. They also didn't expect Plato to like women that much. They described Plato, a figure of royalty and melancholy, as being very devoted to a woman. Beauty was upset and said she was very disappointed in her manager for deceiving her, even though Plato was very famous. Seeing Beauty angry, Plato quickly explained that it was all just an unimportant past. Now, he was a dependable queen bee. Before he finished speaking, he was hit by his teacher. Beauty asked them to stop this complicated reunion and quickly choose who should lure the undead. It was decided when we found out that your manager was my student. So Mr. Socrates, without hesitation, asked his student, Plato, to run. Since he hated running, he would put him in temporarily. Mr. Socrates asked them to focus and memorize each map carefully. Before opening the map, Go Insung seemed hesitant and said he didn't know how long he could keep it open. Beauty asked this young man to calm down and just open the map. When the map was finally opened, they saw all the maps and realized that the map was very complicated. The system notified that 73 monsters were approaching within 20 seconds. This notification drove Go Insung crazy. He had to quickly memorize the exit doors. The system appeared again and notified that 1033 monsters were approaching within 10 seconds. The system's notification was so disturbing that Go Insung couldn't focus on remembering all the map details. Beauty suddenly asked Go Insung to close the map. Since she already remembered everything, it's better to close it now, especially since the monsters were already close to them. After Go Insung closed the map, she immediately asked Plato to eat the celestial bamboo fruit. Plato quickly ate the fruit in one gulp. Then he ran as hard as he could away from them, saying they would meet again later. Plato realized they would beat him to a pulp if he got caught. While running from thousands of monsters, Plato said it was very annoying and he would wait for a chance to get back at his teacher. Go Insung was shocked that all the monsters immediately followed Plato, but Beauty immediately urged him to run so as not to waste any more time. They turned left or right according to Beauty's instructions. They ran as fast as they could as if they were running out of time. Finally, Go Insung saw the exclamation mark he saw at the end of the map. Beauty said they just needed to turn right once more, because after seeing that exclamation mark, they just had to go straight until they saw the hexagonal stone again. Then together, they jumped onto that hexagonal stone. The system emerged and indicated that it was the pathway leading to the waiting room of Dungeon 1-5. They couldn't go back after reaching that point. Go Insung was surprised to realize it was a waiting room and not the exit. Seeing Go Insung's expression, Beauty wondered and asked if she had made a mistake. Go Insung said that Beauty was trying to get the number 1 spot by arriving early by 1 step. Beauty immediately denied it, saying she didn't do it intentionally. With a stiff expression, Go Insung said that humans couldn't be trusted. But Beauty still tried to explain that she didn't do it on purpose. Go Insung was again surprised to realize that the bread spices he left before coming to that place were completely gone again. Beauty, who didn't understand, asked what it meant. Go Insung suspected that the place was symmetrical. Go Insung explained to Beauty that by drawing a small line on the map with their presence. Go Insung explained that because the map in front of them was symmetrical, the entrance and exit could be changed secretly without the participants' knowledge. Beauty was shocked and said that it was truly cheating. Go Insung then reminded them that it was the place they first came to. Mr. Socrates emerged from Go Insung's body and praised the young man, whom he thought was very clever for being able to quickly realize the maze oddity. Go Insung, realizing that Mr. Socrates knew everything, became annoyed because the old man didn't inform them of that information. The old man replied that he wasn't allowed to give spoilers. Mr. Socrates also said that revealing such massive spoilers was a big crime. Go Insung suspected that was also the reason Mr. Socrates possessed his body so that he didn't have to run. Mr. Socrates looked very innocent when he said that he hated running aimlessly. The audience laughed at the annoying and strange behavior of Ryan Socrates. Go Insung asked Beauty if they should run there again. Beauty replied that they could do it because she already memorized the map. However, even if they went, it would be useless if the entrance and exit were swapped again. Go Insung confirmed that. Suddenly, the system sounded a loud warning that they shouldn't stay in the rest area for too long. The two lovers were panicked to hear it, especially when the system said that the great epidemic was beginning to rage. Go Insung, confused, asked what the system meant by the great epidemic. The system added information that the moonlight was getting weaker, so the monsters would be able to move more freely, and if they wanted to survive, they had to run to the hole in the middle of the maze. Go Insung panicked to the point of not understanding what the system was talking about, but the system kept explaining that a powerful specter had been revived. Right at that moment, a giant undead monster appeared before them. The monster was so huge it seemed to almost block out the sky. The undead monster roared, shaking the night, creating fear for those who were now startled by its appearance. Go Insung cursed and asked if they wanted him to fight such a huge monster again. The audience laughed at their difficulty and said they seemed to be created to be beaten. The audience finally understood the difference in difficulty levels between intermediate and expert. Beauty urged Go Insung to run first. The young man asked where to run. Socrates asked if Go Insung hadn't heard the announcement earlier, that he had to run around the maze towards the field in the middle of the maze to survive. The old man touched Go Insung's shoulder and said if the young man ran again, he would hitch a ride on his body again. The audience reminded Go Insung to respect his elders and not to argue with Mr. Socrates, who just wanted to hitch a ride on his body. After Mr. Socrates hitched a ride, they both ran as fast as they could towards the center of the labyrinth. They ran with all their might as the undead monsters began to chase them. When they finally reached the center of the labyrinth again, they looked extremely exhausted. Go Insung complained, saying how exhausting it was. The young man also noticed that the moonlight seemed brighter. Go Insung then realized that the moon above them should be smaller, just like when they were at the entrance. Beauty also noticed this oddity. Mr. Socrates emerged from Go Insung's body and asked if the young man had noticed something. Go Insung saw the monsters and realized that they couldn't enter the central circle area. Finally, Go Insung understood something else. He smiled happily, realizing that out of the 10 symbols of the philosophy of longevity, the theme for this level was the moon. The audience wondered why Go Insung still thought there was a connection to the 10 symbols of longevity. But they were amazed because Go Insung's assumptions had been correct all along. Go Insung said the system informed them that the monsters would be able to move when the moon became weaker, and the monsters couldn't approach their area because the moonlight was very bright there. However, it wasn't the real moon. It was a fake moon whose shape wouldn't change over time. Beauty finally understood. But even so, she was amazed because although the moon's shape didn't change, its light was dimming. Go Insung concluded that it was related to the moon getting bigger. Seeing the huge monster in front of them, Beauty began to feel scared and asked Go Insung what they should do. Go Insung replied that it seemed there was no other way for them. But then Go Insung said that he seemed to have found a solution. Go Insung explained to Beauty that the moonlight coming out of the circle above them was getting weaker because of something. They could conclude that this situation was similar to a moon like a light bulb covered by a polyester bag. So Beauty concluded that they could make the moon brighter by cutting the polyester bag. Go Insung immediately confirmed this. Suddenly, Beauty was caught by the tentacles of the largest undead monster. They both panicked, and Go Insung reached out, hoping to grab Beauty, but it was too late. Beauty tried to shoot the monster holding her body while asking to be released. Finally, the tentacle released Beauty completely, but as a result, the girl fell to the ground quite hard. Go Insung asked if she was okay, but Beauty couldn't answer anymore. The audience hoped that the girl's soul would rest peacefully. Most of the audience cursed the monster that hurt Beauty first. The audience thought that Go Insung and Beauty would die now. Go Insung thought it didn't make sense for him to kill the monster first, but he had thought of another solution. Go Insung said he would reach the moon. So this young man immediately threw his spear towards the moon with all his might. Strangely, the spear was thrown back towards him, not elsewhere. The audience speculated that the throwing force of Go Insung might be insufficient. They panicked too because the moonlight was dimming. As the audience began to despair and think about saying goodbye, Go Insung approached Mr. Socrates with a pleading face. Mr. Socrates immediately knew that Go Insung wanted him to buy the adamantine spear that had been reinforced for Go Insung. With a worshipful face, Go Insung said that only Mr. Socrates could buy the spear for him. But Mr. Socrates still said that he wasn't someone who always let go of balloons for charity. Mr. Socrates said that he would only give Go Insung some tissue balloons if the great PS could impress him with his ideas. Unfortunately, someone would die if he failed to escape from this dungeon. Go Insung was confused. He had no other way but to impress Mr. Socrates first. So, impulsively, the young man immediately threw his spear with all his might toward the big monster in front of them. The spear did manage to penetrate the monster's tentacle, but the diamond spear shattered instantly when it hit the face of the monster covered in strange cloth. The audience suspected that Go Insung would fail as the giant undead monster looked very powerful. Angry at being attacked by Go Insung, the giant monster immediately directed its tentacles to strike back at Go Insung. Fortunately, this young man managed to dodge in time. At that moment, Go Insung saw Beauty's powerful and expensive sword. Without much thought, Go Insung immediately grabbed the sword to attack the monster. With one swing of the sword, Go Insung managed to cut many of the monster's tentacles. This made the giant monster roar with anger. But this time, Go Insung didn't falter. Holding the sword handle tightly, Go Insung said that he would do his best. Go Insung now looked very focused as he activated his focus power to fight the powerful monster in front of him.